Stumbling forward, Alto moved through the forest. His throat was as dry as stone. He needed a drink. The sun beat down on him as he stepped into a small glade. A sweet aroma wafted through the air. In the center of the clearing stood a table loaded with food and wine. At the head of the table stood Alto went still at the sight, for what sat at the head of the table could only be a god. He raised a wine glass to the newcomer and beckoned Alto to approach with open hands. Welcome to Mythical Phylogeny Adventures. Today, we raise our glasses to toast Dionysus, the god of wine, fruit, theater, and insanity. Yes, this fun-loving god has a dark and sinister side, which you should know about. Dionysus is the god of wine, vegetation, fruit, orchards, religious madness, and insanity. He stands in the Greek pantheon with multiple holidays and festivals dedicated to him. In Rome, he is renamed to Bacchus. So, I guess we should begin with his birth. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. When it comes to Greek mythology, there are two causes. 1. Zeus, Poseidon, and Aphrodite can't keep it in their pants. Or 2. Hera, Athena, and Apollo are arrogant. And which one do you think the cause was here? Yep, it is the first, and the second too. This is a little confusing since Dionysus had multiple origins. In some, he is a foreign god which eventually joined the Greek pantheon, but not in others. In the longest version, he was first the child of Zeus and Persephone, but the god was torn apart by the Titans at Hera's request. But the young child's heart survived. Zeus had fallen in love with Semele, a daughter of the king of Thebes. And this is unique of Dionysus. Semele is mortal, so Dionysus should have been a demigod, like his half-brother Heracles, but he is a full-fledged and true god. While some say Semele ate the heart of the first incarnation of Dionysus, but it doesn't end here. Well, Hera found out about Zeus's affair, and she got mad. Turning herself into an old woman, Hera went to see Semele and planted a seed in the mortal woman's mind. A single idea and question. What does a god look like? What is their true form? Semele asked Zeus to show her, and he complied, due to an oath he had made. Zeus's true form shone so brightly with wild lightning that Semele burst into flames and died. But Zeus isn't a complete scumbag. He didn't want his unborn child to die. Instead, he saved the child by sewing him into Zeus's thigh. Eventually, Zeus removed Dionysus after a period. Dionysus' care was passed to his aunt Ino and her husband, Athamas, and Hera was livid at finding out about Dionysus. So, she drove Ino and her husband mad, where they murdered their own children and then committed suicide. But Hera was still mad, and Zeus wanted to protect the baby. So he gave him to the nymphs and Silenos, an elder satyr. And that says a lot about Dionysus' personality. One is the root word of nymphomaniac, and the other is a race of folk who have a permanent hard-on for life. Trust me, I'm not sure how I'll do a video on satyrs due to the artwork. Regardless, Hera wasn't done with Dionysus when she found out about him. He was left insane and wandered the lands aimlessly. After years, he met the goddess Cybele, or Rhea, who cured his insanity. She gave Dionysus a purpose, and he continued to travel and teach the ways of winemaking. One of those he went to teach was King Lycurgus of Thracia. He rejected Dionysus though, but Dionysus invited the queen and princes to a party, where they drank wine and became insane. They tore the king apart. The king's mother ran through the streets with her son's head on her belt, which was all she was wearing. This wasn't the end of his violence. No, next, Dionysus went to India. They rejected him, but even worse, they rejected his wine. How outrageous! This led Dionysus to rally an army of satyrs and nymphs. Good for him, some other Greek gods joined in, but not Hera. No, she aided against Dionysus. After a long conflict involving turning lakes to wine, it all ended in a draw. Dionysus would eventually go to the underworld to raise his mother from the dead. He also married a woman called Ariadne, who was rescued from the Minotaur by Theseus. Not to mention, he does occur in the legend of Midas's touch. Quite the list of adventurers, wouldn't you say? Our jovial god had a following known as a cult. Their celebrations were prone to turn into wild parties, filled with drinks, orgies, and violence. Let's look at a few. Dionysia, Hallio, Ascolia, and Linnea. Lesser Dionysias, being more rural and the oldest celebrations, and was in late December or early January. It involved a parade, but the greater Dionysia was in the major cities, and was in March or April. It would add in performances. Antitheria was a spring celebration. For 3 days, they said the dead could rise. People would dress up to match Dionysus' followers before a ritual dedication to Dionysus. A symbolic marriage of a woman to Dionysus would occur. The Dionysian mysteries added in goat sacrifices. It served as a ceremony for a change in people's lives, from child to adult, marriage, and passing. Bacchanalia involved animals, usually goats or bulls, being torn apart while alive. Originally, it was restricted to only women, but that changed with time. With it, it became a drunken escapade and sexual deviations. Sounds like fun, doesn't it? Dionysus is the face of the two theater masks, one happy and one sad. This represents the dual personalities you see in the god of wine. His personality flits between violence, mania, joy, ecstasy, and sorrow. Just look at his ceremonies and festivals. His association with theater comes from the plays and performances that dominated his festivals. They would even wear wooden masks, similar to the theater masks we see. These masks also let a person look like a satyr, or a nymph, or a satyr as a human. Now, why such carnage in his celebrations? Well, let's look at his past. In one version, he was torn apart by titans until just a heart remained, before having his heart eaten by a woman, who was to rebirth him, but died again. And we also have an event where Dionysus convinced a bunch of women to rip their father, husband, and son apart, and go gallivanting through the streets with his body parts tied to them. Yeah, it's pretty obvious what is going on here. I do need to ask, was all this wild behavior simply due to drinking wine? Well, a little history lesson on wine. Winemaking in a primitive form dates back to the Stone Age, grew in the Bronze Age, but flourished in the Hellenistic period. They already had wine critics back then, as it moved from being just a drink of royalty and priests. Thank the Mycenaean and Minoan wars for that. But here is the kicker. The Greeks didn't drink the same kind of wine we have today. We have refined the process of winemaking over 2,000 years. They didn't have our temperature-controlled refrigerators or hydrometers, and they lacked the more effective yeast strains that are used today. Also, Greeks place a massive value on self-control and composure. They would never allow themselves to be seen like those uncultured swine who drink to get drunk. First century wine would rarely have an alcohol content of 12%, usually much lower. But more modern wines are about 12 to 15%. To further this divide, the Greeks would dilute their wine. Pure water was common, but salt water and honey was used to further the flavor. And it made it last a little longer. So, no. What they are drinking wasn't what you drink today. And that brings us back to the question. Were their antics the result of getting drunk? Well, probably not. That means the women were ripping goats apart while relatively sober. I don't know if that's more terrifying than drunken rampages. Due to the size of the pantheon, most smaller cities and towns didn't have a dedicated temple to each god. Dionysus was often forced to share a temple with Apollo, the god of music. Music and wine. I can see where they would go together. Also, a sun god and a guardian god? Or a god of poems and a theater god? Yeah, they've got a few similarities. As for where Dionysus may have originated as a foreign god, well, I have heard some speculation that it was modern Turkey. There are also some potential ties to India and Egypt. So, I need to ask, what if the existence of gods was indisputable? Not a question of belief, but of fact. It would change a lot. People would work to gain the favor of gods openly. Have you ever wondered why so many women were willing to have an affair with a god like Zeus or Poseidon? It would be the exact same as how modern women chased after celebrities and professional athletes. So the first part of the story makes sense. A lot of it. Now, how would Dionysus really influence the world? Wine festivals would be a chance to seek the divine blessing of our god. Could you imagine what having Dionysus' blessing on your vineyard would mean? For a merchant, a god-blessed wine would allow you to fetch a high price. You could sell your wine for double, but would you even need to? Wine critics would come far and wide to taste the wine that Dionysus deemed good. Could you imagine some snub-nosed wine critic coming up and insulting your wine, but then you have Dionysus compliment it? Oh, that critic's reputation would go down the toilet. With Dionysus also a theater god, he would be invoked at every performance. They may begin all theater shows with a prayer to Dionysus. His temple would have a section that's crafted in an amphitheater for the gatherings. The temples would be his home in the mortal realms, where he would stay for extended periods. As we see with our tale about Dionysus' war in India, we are forced to address the nationality of gods. Would each nation have their own deities, or the same ones but by different names? The answer to this depends on the setting, but it means the mortals could be recruited to serve the deities in war. I'm going to touch on how demigods and royalty would work next week. I feel that will be a better time to address this topic. Alto drank deeply from his goblet as he sat at Dionysus' table. The Lord of Wine laughed. Satyrs and nymphs danced about, poured wine, and carried trays loaded with grapes. A call for music came out. The bard's shoulders slumped as he found himself without an instrument. Oh, what a trivial matter for Dionysus. Reaching around, he retrieved a lute. It was gorgeous, and far nicer than anything that such a simple bard would have ever held. Alto felt that it was far too fine a gift for him. Gorgeous work was too rich for such a simple minstrel. The god insisted, and Alto took it. His hands trembled. He wasn't fit for a performance for a god, but Dionysus didn't care. He urged the bard to play, and he did. All of his suffering and pain spurred forth a song that he had never heard before. The wine had loosened his mind until he could feel this melody within him. Alto played freely like he had never played before. Dionysus is a complex deity who has suffered greatly and brought much suffering as well. His worship calls forth a different sort of behavior than one would expect in a civilized society. Thank you for watching, adventurers. Please come back next week, where we shall meet the very first hero of myth, the demigod Gilgamesh. Until then, I'll see you on the roads.